if you have a propensity for going on cussing tirades, just know that we are gonna be recording it. And the idea behind recording it is it will be made available for you at a later date, or for anybody else that wasn't able to attend either last week's session or this session. So that being said, we're going to get started. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Jeff Weiscarver. I'm the president of DDME. And DDME is a company that has recently signed an agreement with Whitmix for the purpose of distributing a few products and services, and we're going to talk about those today in a general sense, and then we're going to be providing more detailed training in 2 subsequent sessions. But for today, we're just going to essentially talk about, in general terms, what our agreement is, who's involved, the principles of my company, and the products that we've come up with that we believe are going to be successful partnering with Whitmix. DDME, it's a company. I'm a 50% owner. Bill Ross owns the other 50%. Bill and I come from a background of medical. So we've developed and sold medical diagnostic instruments. And about 5 years ago, Bill has retired and came out of retirement for this. And I kind of shifted my career path and just enjoyed the prospect of kind of pioneering a new segment in dentistry. So 100% of our efforts are with dentists, and we've come up with some products and services that we believe will enable dentists to be successful in some unique areas. We've come up with an approach that we borrowed from the medical side of our careers, and kind of reshaped it and repackaged it into a kind of a dental philosophy, and essentially it's measure and know. And we applied that principle to a few aspects of the products that we're going to be talking about today. Those are the list of names that you see there on the screen. Bill Ross, he's the CEO. He's not on the call today. That's me. Shannon is the person that works with most of the offices. We have about 200 dental offices that we're currently working with at one level or another. Some are very, very active and some are dormant. Courtney is our accountant, and based on what Courtney does and her activities, I changed her thing to controller because she does seem to have a lot of detailed input for me especially. And then Patrick McGuire is our VP of sales, and Patrick is going to be involved with the rest of our calls, but I don't believe he's going to be on today. The topics that we're going to discuss today are the monitor, the Bruxism monitor, and then the BRX Pro, which is a unique, I hate using that word. It's an appliance that we came up with once we discovered a problem. And the problem that we're going to spend some time talking about the problem today, but not a lot. We'll spend much more time on our next session. But when we kind of took measure and know, and we started measuring these dental patients, we identified an issue that then required a solution, and the BRX Pro kind of addresses some of the things that we found. If you take nothing away from today's session, I want you to know that you do not have to be an expert in dental sleep medicine, sleep apnea, bruxism. This isn't going to be a deep dive into any of those. We're gonna learn enough to have an intelligent, basic conversation and guide them into a 30-minute web demo with myself. So that's kind of going to be what your general, at least initial mandate is. If you want to take a deep dive and learn more, we'll do that on a one-on-one basis. If you don't, then we won't. So I want you to learn that. And again, essentially at the end of this 3 training sessions, you'll be able to set the stage for us to be able to make a sale either on both the monitor and the appliance, or one or the other. Okay. All right. So let's talk about what we're doing. If you look at these 2 sets of damaged teeth, and I said, does anyone on this call think of sleep apnea when they look at these teeth? And if I were to ask that to any 10 groups of people, very, very few, if any, would say, oh, yeah, I think every time I see damaged teeth, I think of sleep apnea. It's just not how we're trained to deal with these types of damaged teeth. However, 50% approximately, give or take, of the people that have this problem that you're looking at have it because of sleep apnea. Okay, now that has massive implications. And when you think of what dentists are trained to do when they see this, it's unfortunate, but the very thing that they're told to do in many cases actually worsens the sleep apnea. Okay, so that kind of, the reason I say that is that sets the opportunity, because when you look at this, this is not an uncommon problem. In fact, almost all dentists see this. Not all of them deal with it. Some of them will refer them out, but they all see this. So it is a very large opportunity, and we believe we found a way to help dentists better manage this type of problem. Okay, um, so let's kind of first talk about bruxism. Bruxism, you may or may not know, is a major sleep disorder. And when I say major, I'm talking about the incidence in society. And it's number 4 on the list of sleep disorders. So there's insomnia, which is number 1 by a huge margin. Number 2 is sleep apnea. I'm sure most of us have heard about sleep apnea. Number 3 is the limb movements or the leg twitching. And then number 4 is bruxism. So the 4th most common sleep disorder is bruxism. And bruxism is ignored by the medical community. So if you go to a sleep lab and your problem is bruxism, you're pretty much out of luck. I mean, there are some sleep labs that deal with it, but by and large, they say, well, that's a dental issue. Go to your dentist. From the medical perspective, bruxism is a fairly common thing, but since it's a dental issue, we don't have to worry about it. So that's the reason I state that is, again, that kind of contributes to the opportunity here. As we kind of go through our sessions, that'll become more and more apparent. Okay, so bruxism, the number 1 cause is the airway issues. And I'm just going to introduce the airway today. I'm not going to talk about sleep apnea to any extent at all, other than to say that airway issues are the number 1 contributor to damaging teeth, okay, for those that have nighttime bruxism. So we have to have a basic understanding of it. And so there's some wiggly lines on there that show normal breathing. The middle person there laying there with that red arrow, that red arrow there is kind of where the snoring occurs, and then the snoring's kind of a nuisance, but it's not necessarily a medical issue. It does cause problems. It does cause medical problems. It is bad for you, but it's not a diagnosable, reimbursable disorder. So some people say, well, it's just a nuisance. Well, yeah, it's a nuisance. But it's more than that. But because you don't get paid for treating it, people tend to minimize its impact. And then finally, the bottom part is an example of an apnea, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of the progression: normal, snoring, and then apnea. That's kind of how we work down the scale of sleep apnea, and we'll talk about that more in session 2. Okay, so I keep talking about this big opportunity, and I know it's kind of a grandiose statement, and a lot of people say things like that, and so I'm going to tell you why I believe what I believe. And first and foremost, I think if we're successful, and I believe we will be, there's going to be a paradigm shift. From that first picture of those 2 sets of damaged teeth, we want to change what a dentist thinks when they see that. So that's the paradigm shift I'm talking about, because we have a way to identify those patients who have sleep apnea and then bruxism, or don't. And then if they do have bruxism, what kind do they have? So we have a test that will measure it and give you a number. Okay, that's very different from asking a patient, geez, how'd you get these damaged teeth? Okay, well, that's really not a very fair question. So then you can say, well, do you have pain? Oh yeah, sometimes. Does your jaw click? Oh, sometimes, So then the dentist, before we kind of came here, the dentist would ask the patient, so how did you get this sleep disorder? And think about it, they're asleep. How would they know? Honestly. So then the dentist has said, well, yeah, there's damaged teeth here. The patient says, oh no, I don't grind my teeth, so I don't know how my teeth are damaged. That's not uncommon. Okay. So what we did is we came up with a way that measures both the airway and bruxism at the same time on the same time axis, and we developed some analysis protocols that will give you the information, the dentist, the information to say, well, actually we have an airway issue, and in the course of dealing with the airway, we're going to protect your teeth, and we're going to actually treat the problem, not just put a band-aid on it. And when I say band-aid, I mean protect the teeth. Um, and then finally, we're going to talk about a new way to approach those damaged teeth that takes into account the condition of the patient's airway, and that's the BRX Pro, which we'll talk a little bit more next time. But that's the whole point of the BRX Pro, is that it's an occlusal guard, but then it also has a positive impact on the airway. Okay. I'm going to take a pause here. I've plowed through 8 slides, and is there anybody that has a question, or did I go too fast? And let's see. I guess that's okay. All right. That's I, I've been accused of plowing through because I like to talk and teach, and sometimes I leave the audience behind. So I just don't want to. I want to make sure that I don't do that. So if any point in time that you have a question, or you don't get something, or you got it and you want to learn more because it's kind of cool or what have you, just let me know. Um, Okay, so the beginning of all this is, and measure and know, that's measure. So we have to take a measurement, and we need to find out what our starting point is with our patient. That's first and foremost. It's really important that we know where we're starting. And it's not a series of questions. It's actually like, if somebody says, oh, I got a problem, the dentist takes an x-ray. He just doesn't say, well, geez, how's that root canal? Now he'll take an x-ray and see what's going on. So same thing here. It's not on. It's an inexpensive test. It's easy to take. It involves about 10 minutes of giving instructions to a patient. They take the monitor home with them. About 5 minutes before they go to sleep, they attach the four. They do those 4 steps that you see on the screen, and they start the monitor. It records their sleep, their breathing, their snoring, their bruxing. And then in the morning, it turns itself off. The patient takes everything off, puts it in the bag, and brings it back to the office. That's it. So the hookup's simple. It's very simple for the patient. In the morning, there's a download, and then you end up with a report. So the purpose of the report in the morning when you do a download is, okay, let's triage you. Let's find out what the status is of your airway, of your snoring, of your bruxism, and let's make a decision. Okay, now you're looking on your screen, you're looking at 2 reports, and I'm just going to introduce the concept of the medical path and the dental path. The dental path is unique to us. No one else has it, and I'm really going to pound that fact in, that there's a lot of people testing patients for sleep apnea. No one is testing patients the way we do in the dental path. Okay, so when we talk about competitors in session 2, or we're going to have to talk about competitors, but almost all of them are going to be on the medical sleep apnea path, not the path on the right that has the kind of the purple fields to it. But at the end of the day, in the morning, there's a report, and depending on the path that the dentist wants to take, we'll generate that report for them, and they'll make a decision. Oh, geez, it looks like you don't have apnea, you're not snoring, but you're damaging your teeth. Let me make an occlusal guard like was taught in dental school. Or they might learn, geez, you do have a little bit of apnea. I'm going to make you a BRX Pro because I don't want to make the apnea worse in protecting your teeth. Or your apnea is so bad, it's not appropriate for me to help you. Let me get you to a sleep lab. Here's the sleep lab I like to work with. I'm going to make a call, and they'll be expecting you to call them, and here's their number. Okay, so those are the kinds of things that occur as a result of this report. Okay? Now, on the idea that we're going to help them, on the vast majority of patients, the dentist is going to be able to do something for the patient. And in those cases, we found that if there was an airway issue, the occlusal guards, the single arch guards, caused a problem. And so there wasn't really a good answer. The dentist would say, geez, Jeff, you're so smart for identifying this problem. What am I supposed to do? And we didn't have a good answer, and it was just awkward for everybody. So we said, well, let's come up with an occlusal guard that takes into account the condition of the airway and has some settings to allow for the appliance to protect the teeth without making apnea worse. And we found that actually the BRX Pro improves the airway in most patients that wear it. So the purpose of the BRX Pro is to protect the teeth and maintain or improve the airway. Okay, it's a dual arch occlusal guard, different from the single arch guard. Okay, so that's the BRX Pro. It's unique. I was just telling Margaret before we started, we have a 510K submission. The FDA had a couple questions. We're answering it, and it will be 510K cleared here in a short order. And we're really excited about having a 510K cleared product for the purpose of protecting the patient's teeth. So that's the BRX Pro. We'll talk quite a bit more about it actually in our second session. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you, and I'm going to get a little salesy. And at the end of the day, we're all here to sell a product that improves the ability of our dentists that we serve to help their patients. Okay, but in order for us to be successful, we have to be able, that dentist has to be able to make a living. Okay, and the ROI we've developed kind of demonstrates how not only is it good for your patient and it makes you a better clinician, you can actually add to your practice's bottom line in doing so. So it's almost a trifecta. That's my Kentucky Derby reference there. It answers all three relevant questions that we like to see. Does it help the patient? Does it help the dentist? And does it help the dentist do a better job? And we have an answer to all three of those. So with regards to helping the dentist make a living, does it add to the dentist's bottom line? We've come up with this ROI. This is a screen capture of the ROI. On session 3, we're actually going to go through the Excel document. But the point of the ROI is in the course of talking to the prospective customer, we're going to say, how many patients do you see? How many do you think you'll do a week? How many studies do you think you'll do a week? And do you want to use the BRX Pro on a lot of them? Or are you already doing sleep apnea testing, or where you at? So based on the answer, we'll fill in the 4 options on this, and it will run the numbers. Okay, this is kind of an optimistic view, because if you buy one device, the most you could hope to do is 4 studies in a week, and you can see the impact on the bottom line for the year. So a dentist could easily make $100,000 a year, and that's the first year. After the unit's been paid for, obviously the profit margin goes up, and there's things that can impact that. We have dentists that have 4 or 5 monitors that are always out. So there's dentists that send us 15, 20, that do 15 or 20 tests a week. Okay, so they've really kind of focused their practice on it. The most common dentist is going to say, geez, I got these 5 or 6 patients I've been struggling with, and it sounds like this is the kind of thing that I've needed to actually do some benefit for these. I'll take one, and they'll think, okay, I'm going to use it on these 4 or 5, and then they may implement it and do a couple a week. That's probably the most common implementation. But at the end of the day, when you're sitting down, just know as a sales group, you have an ROI that we believe is accurate. It's not overly optimistic. I've seen those, make $6 million a year, and I've actually seen that number, and that's just silly. This is a realistic ROI, and I'm very, very happy I've used it once, and it worked out very well. So we're coming up on the end of our session. and I wanted to kind of prepare you for session two. For session two, we're going to talk about sleep apnea. There's different kinds, there's different ways you can measure for it. And we're also going to talk about how is it specifically related to bruxism and what's the interaction there. We're going to take probably the deepest dive into what we do that's unique to anybody else. Okay, we're going to talk about the competition. I think any good sales force has good idea of some of the objections they might hear out in the field. So we're going to talk about the competitors out there, and then we're going to finish with the marketing activities on session two. You know what Lorraine and I and others are working on with regards to helping you be successful at promoting the product. So that being said, I did want to kind of pause for a second and see if there's anybody else anybody that had a question, or does it trigger any thoughts that anybody might have?
I don't have a question. Well, I do have a question. Question two, will we be able to get copies of these slides as well? I thought it was much easier to follow this time with this.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what I did last time is I'll kind of take the slides, and I'll send a follow-up email thanking you for coming. And by the way, so Margaret, who's with you? Was it Lori Schoen?
Laura Sean?
Laura Schoen? Okay. All right. So there's okay. So I have that. So yeah, I will get you the slides, and we'll go over, and I'll send that in an email.
Thank you. That'll be for session two, right, Jeff?
Yeah, and then session two, what you're looking at now is the topics for session two. And actually, we're having our first session two tomorrow. So if you
How is that one? Is that the one you'll send the slides
Yeah, I'll
before?
send this. I'll send the slides after each time I do one of these. I'll send the slides afterwards,
After, not in advance.
not in advance. That's correct.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you. So let me ask you. Excuse me. Would it help to have the slides in advance? Do you think?
I think so. I sat through the first session and I had a hard time keeping up.
Okay.
And now sitting in the follow-up, it was much easier with the slides.
Okay. So I will do that. I'll send an email out to the whole group, and it will be kind of a reminder about tomorrow's session two, and I'll put the slides in there. If that'll help, by all means. There's no reason not to do it.
So what I do, Jeff, is I make notes on the slides, so it helps me in that regard as well. So I remember what we were talking about in relation to my notes. That's exactly what I do.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll do that. Consider that done. That's great input.
All right.
Y-
What
y-
questions I was thinking of? I thought I had one.
All right. Well, I think if there, what we'll do, I will get the slides out today, and for those of you that are going to be on the session two tomorrow, I will see you then. And then if not, then we'll meet you on our second session. And also, actually, I'm going to stop recording now. Um,
15,
oh,
15 minutes.
oh, can you guys hear me now? I couldn't hear you for a second.
Yeah, we can hear you now. We couldn't a minute ago.
Oh, okay, yeah. When I clicked stop recording, it cut off the audio. I just noticed that. So, um, did you guys have any questions that you were trying to ask and couldn't because I couldn't hear you?
Yeah, I thought you were just ignoring me, but yeah, I have a question.
Okay, all right.
On your reports where it says a very simple reporting, the triage sheet, you
Yes,
made the statement that one is medical report versus a dental report.
correct.
So the one on the right side is the medical, the left side is the dental.
It's the opposite actually. So the purple one is the dental report, and the one that's kind of a little more traditional in its appearance is kind of the medical report. And yeah, the paths are very different, and one is a well-worn path. The medical path is a lot of people know about it, and a lot of people are doing it. Um, when I say a lot, I'll say about 1% of dentists participate in the testing of sleep apnea and treating. And we believe that number should be about 10% or more. And we've identified the reasons why more dentists aren't involved in the medical path, and we've addressed those issues with the dental path. Okay?
Okay. And then also, I know there's the AHI,
Yes.
and do you happen to have any kind of a cheat sheet for what each of those abbreviations are for? I see they're down on the bottom, but I don't know if you haven't established, like the OEI, the ABI,
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, you're getting into session two, and I'm pulling. No, no, it's okay because we have time. I'll be glad to talk about it. Um, So yeah, so what we have, if you remember that earlier slide where I just kind of had pictures, you can see that I've added some specifics on this very similar slide, and it goes directly to what you're saying. There's a little cheat sheet, the AHI there, and
mm-hmm.
so we do, I love that you're asking these types of questions because that means I did a good job of planting questions in your mind because a lot of us have some exposure to this, but there's
Mm-hmm.
specifics that we lack that kind of make it uncomfortable to talk about. Okay, so no one likes to talk about a thing that they really don't know. I mean, they might know the words or the verbiage, but if you don't know what it is, like if you don't know what AHI stands for, and you run around saying, "Oh, our AHI is better than your AHI," and they said, "Well, what's an AHI?" and then the conversation stops. That's no good. So we'll
Right.
talk about that type of information in our next session in some detail.
Okay. Okay, good. Because I know I've heard you talk about them, and I'm sure you've told me before what they are, but I need a cheat sheet so I can go memorize
Yeah,
them.
and we'll go through, and it's we have a little more than a cheat sheet. We'll go through the different types of apneas here. You can see there's a kind of apnea, and at the end, that big orange rectangle there, that's an apnea, and then at the end there's those two big black kind of events there. Those are clenching at the end of the apnea. So there's somebody's having an
Mm-hmm.
apnea, and then they break open the airway and they clench. So this is how tooth damage is related to the airway. So we'll talk about it. Here's another example where it's a different kind. It's not an apnea. It's a different type of respiratory event. But you can see how rhythmic both the jaw is. So you can see those little kind of black lines and then the big black vertical lines, and you can see how tied they are to the airway. So this is the kind of thing that we learn because we measure both for apnea and the bruxism.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have yeah. I, I was really concerned about talking about things like these topics on the first session simply because it's tough to gauge where everybody's starting point is. Like some people may know more about apnea than I do, and they're sitting here listening to me drone on about these very basic topics. And then the other thing is I take a deep dive and no one's ever even heard of it. And so you kind of have to start at a kind of a middle ground, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Now, knowing that you're going to get into this later, I feel better.
Okay, yeah,
I'm just
it,
trying to read through it.
it is, and we're going to spend a fair amount of time on it.
Okay.
Was there
Do
any
you
other?
guys, do you compare,
I'm sorry.
Jeff, do you guys compare the dual arch versus the single arch?
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about appliances on the third session, and I'm actually giving a free webinar on appliance selection, and that's open to the general public. We're sending that out to a couple hundred dentists. If you guys would like an invite to the appliance selection webinar, I'll be glad to send you one. Actually, I think Sarah or John Hughes are sending those out, so I'll have them put you guys on the list, because that question there. Oh, okay, Jeff, that's great that you give us all this info, but what appliance am I supposed to use? That's the number one question I get.
Yeah.
And then as a salesperson, if you can say, well, in these cases, we found that this appliance works better in those scenarios and that one works better in those scenarios, you really help out your dentist. That really helps them out. So we're going to spend some time on that.
When is that webinar?
I believe it's October 8th. Let me pull up my, let's see here. Let me pull up my calendar here. Appliance selection is actually the 9th, Friday the 9th at 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll record that, and if you can't make it, then we'll make the recording available.
Great, that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's the appliance selection that's a good one. The other question you'll get a lot, and I haven't scheduled the time, is, oh, what about medical insurance? That's another big one, and I will tell you in our sessions that it's going to come up a lot. We'll figure out a good answer for you. We'll kind of do role playing on our third session, and one of the questions we'll ask is, the dentist, okay, that's great. What about medical insurance? And we'll kind of have a script for you on how to answer that, and provide a resource for the dentist when they ask that question.
I'm sure that is a big question.
Yeah, because it's an intriguing topic, and the more you learn, it becomes less intriguing. We'll put it that way.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, guys. Well, I'll send out the PowerPoint here in a couple hours, and then we'll see some of you hopefully tomorrow or on the second session too, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.